Good evening, or good day, because we don't know when it's going to be on. Welcome to District 18. I'm Representative Ralph Boehm, and for those that don't know, District 18 is because we are in New Hampshire Senate District 18, which includes Litchfield and Manchester Wards 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. In this show, we will discuss politics, legislation, local issues, whatever. And my guest for this show tonight is a strong advocate for parental rights and the education liaison for Cornerstone, Anne-Marie Banfield. So welcome, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And today we will discuss the new federal education law, ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act, and the New Hampshire School Board Association. But first, a little history and facts as where we are now in the federal involvement in our education. In January 2002, the No Child Left Behind bill was signed into law. It was a 10-year plan that had guidelines that anyone with any common sense could see were impossible to meet. In July 2010, after the legislation session was over, the State Board of Education, along with Governor Lynch, decided to adopt on principle the Common Core standards because they then saw that No Child Left Behind the guidelines were not going to be met. So the State Department of Education asked the feds if they can get a waiver from No Child Left Behind by stating they would use Common Core and use one of the federal government mandated assessment tests, Smarter Balanced. They did this because they saw that more than 90% of the schools would fail the NCLB guidelines. Instead of showing that NCLB was a bad bill to start with, they fell in line with the federal government. The DOE keeps saying that school districts are not mandated to use Common Core, but the statewide testing is based on Common Core. You can't have one without the other. It is a mandate. But again, they needed to spin it to get around the New Hampshire Constitution. This was clearly a mandated funding issue. So now we have the ESSA, Every Student Succeeds Act. Another example of the federal government ignoring the Constitution. The 10th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which states very simply, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So, Anne-Marie, how does this new federal interference of education hurt us?
Well, I've made a list, and we can go through that list one by one. Unfortunately, this bill itself is 1,061 pages. Well, so if you think that there is local control or state control in 1,061 pages of federal law, I would say sit down and read the 1,061 pages. Unfortunately, in that law, ESSA, which I think we will just refer to it as that, it's a simple acronym for that, there's a lot of contradictions. It appears in some ways to give control back to the states and local communities. But as you read through it, you realize that what they give you, they also seem to take away. There's contradictory statements. One, for instance, is that parents have a right to opt out of the standardized assessments. Sounds like you're giving control back to the parents. But within ESSA, there is a provision that states that there has to be a 95% participation rate in the schools when they test the students. So on one hand, you have the federal government saying, schools, you need 95% of your kids to participate in this assessment. And on the other hand, they're saying, parents, you have the right to opt your kids out of that assessment. And so what we are seeing is schools, school administrators, states, really come down hard to push these assessments.
But the federal government said, and if you don't have that 95%, we may hold back your Title I money. Now, school districts across the country are refusing the statewide assessments, and nobody has lost any Title I money. So can you imagine the poor school districts in the state not getting their Title I money? And that's the money that goes to school districts that have a high number of people getting free and reduced lunch.
Right.
So it's not going to happen. It's an empty threat. Also, there are only probably 7 high schools in the state out of 80-some high schools that accept Title I money. And I don't believe Litchfield does. So what's the difference? Why can't they all not take, in this case now for a high school, the SAT test? You don't have to meet that 95%. Because you're not going to lose anything anyway.
Right. We have not seen that, but it is amazing how they respond to just the threat. The threat being out there. You will see school board members, you will see school administrators, you will see bureaucrats at the DOE, you will see legislators sometimes. Just that threat out there, they will, push and push and push and refrain from passing laws, for instance, that put into state statute a parent's right to refuse these assessments. And parents are doing it across the country. Parents are doing it in towns across New Hampshire because these assessments are not good. They're not achievement tests. They don't really test academic knowledge. There are psychometric assessments that are more about assessing your dispositions, your child's dispositions, their attitudes, their values, and it really is not a good measurement of your child's academic knowledge. If you want that, I would suggest getting your kids tested outside the school system, which seems kind of crazy. It used to be that the state test or a standardized test, even in private schools, were kind of used as that outside picture, to kind of gauge how well your kids know the material. Right. That's not how it is anymore.
No, the test should be an objective test on what you're supposed to know in the 3rd grade, the 6th grade, or whatever. And right now, the Smarter Balanced test, and people can go online and take sample questions, you see, the test is not an objective test in math. They're making math subjective.
Yes.
How did you get your answer? My brain told me.
Yeah.
And what some kids have answered. Also, I believe Manchester, their school committee had told their superintendent, you will send a letter to the parents saying they do not have to take the test.
Right.
Right,
and bravo to Manchester for doing that. Parents need to think about the amount of time. I mean, I'm hearing from parents, from teachers, from kids across the state who are saying this is ridiculous, the amount of time that is being spent on test prep and on testing. That's why parents are pulling their kids out and they're saying, you know what, I'm going to let my kids read. I'm going to, give them some free time. The stress is unbearable. It's developmentally inappropriate for the younger children. The questions are not appropriate for them. We have child experts across the country who have said this over and over again, and nobody seems to be listening, so the parents are simply pulling their kids out of this assessment. But as far as ESSA goes, there's a laundry list of problems with this federal law, and there's other concerns. Like it says in the law that no data is to be collected except for what is authorized. So it sounds like, no data is going to be collected except for what's authorized. We also know that the feds can hack into the DOE's data system, and they've done it. And the U.S. DOE has been unable to secure this data. So anything that your kids put on the Smarter Balanced assessment, they have a memorandum of understanding that they will share that information with the federal government. So that's why another reason why a lot of parents are not letting their kids take the standardized assessment is all this data, all this information goes to the consortium, who then sends it to the federal government by their memorandum of understanding.
And the consortium, right? And so this is a private company. There's 2 tests that the federal government says you can use: Smarter Balanced and PARC. They're all private organizations making money off of this.
Mm-hmm. Lots of money.
And collecting the data, grading the test, even though in New Hampshire that there's probably not supposed to be any name to the test. It goes by the student ID, but we all know from past experience there's no such thing as an anonymous data, because that's been proven over and over again.
Yeah, I think data experts will tell you that. There's another provision. It's on page 580 of the 1061-page bill, and it's called the Family Engagement Provision of the ESSA. And this is a bureaucracy. It is to take the form of a statewide infrastructure for family engagement and education. The first task of this infrastructure is to determine parental needs and the best means for delivery of services to address such needs. That's on page 587. So apparently it didn't occur to Congress that parents' primary needs may be for the government to go away and leave them alone.
Yeah.
I mean, right now we have Florida, and I'm not sure where this bill was, but there was a bill in Florida that schools are going to start grading parents. how about they focus on what they should be focusing on, and that is to teach the kids the basics, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Let's get that squared away before you decide to come into our homes and before you decide to start grading us. So that is a definite concern that is out there. There's been articles written about this, that Big Brother is now going to, come into your home if you let them in and, kind of engage the family and things like that. This is another bureaucracy that is being created, and it's being created in this federal legislation that supposedly, replace No Child Left Behind was supposed to be a big improvement. I think it's important to also state who voted for it, because this is federal legislation, and in New Hampshire, it's important to note that Senators Kelly Ayotte and Jeanne Shaheen both supported this bill, and Congresswoman Annie Custer. Right. The only one who voted against it was Congressman Frank Gintum, and kudos to him for understanding how bad this legislation was. Were there some provisions in it that were better than No Child Left Behind? I'm sure you can go through it and find some things. But there are also a lot of bad things. And what they probably should have done is start chipping away at No Child Left Behind and start really returning power to the states. Because the other thing that is bad in ESSA is that the testing, the standardized testing provision still exists. You have to test your kids every year. Now, I don't think anybody's opposed to testing, but really does that need to come from the federal government, number one. Number two, it's great because they say locals can decide what assessments they can use. You would think, oh, great, they're returning control back to the local schools. You guys decide what kind of assessment. That way, if, we want to use an achievement test that tests knowledge instead of these psychometric assessments, you would think that this provision in ESSA would allow for that. But in ESSA, it says that those local assessments that you guys choose on your school boards must be approved by the state. Right. And then ultimately, in this law, it states that all state plans have to ultimately be approved by the U.S. Secretary of Education. And if they are not he does not approve them, funding could be withheld. So the idea, and so when you talk to Senator Shaheen or Senator Ayotte or Congresswoman Custer and you say, I really don't like some of what's in ESSA, why did you vote for it? And they say, well, it returns control to the state and locals. I mean, read the language. Okay, go read the language, and then you will go back to the contradictions that ultimately the U.S. Secretary of Education holds that power.
Yeah, I'm sure they read it all just like they read Obamacare.
Exactly.
I mean, also, I had sent a letter to Senator Ayotte, and I asked, why did you vote for this? Yeah. And she sent me this big, long answer back saying, and for New Hampshire, she worked with the senator from Connecticut. I'm going, so for New Hampshire, you worked with the senator of Connecticut. Why didn't you work with somebody in New Hampshire? Yeah. I don't recall you ever asking me as the ranking Republican on the Education Committee anything about it, or anybody in New Hampshire did you ask about it? I mean, but that just floored me when she said that. I mean,
well, and I called her office specifically and talked to her office, and they kept putting out the talking points that this returns control, and I said, well, I think you mentioned actually reading the bill. This bill was sent to them. I think they just had a couple days before they voted on it. It's 1,061 pages. I'd be surprised if anybody of them read it in the way it was pushed through, after the final version. In the contradictions in this legislation, and right now, for instance, they are working on the rules, as you know.
Right, they should. Now they got to make rules.
Now they got to make rules
for another thousands and thousands of pages. Yeah.
And that's what they're doing right now. And it's interesting to watch how that's playing out. But so we don't know exactly what the rules are going to be once it comes out. But if you do read the legislation line by line, and I haven't read all 1,061 pages myself. I'm picking parts out and looking at the contradictions right now. It's disturbing, and so no matter what comes out of the rules, you can see the language itself and be disturbed by what is in there and realize that, No Child Left Behind was a bad bill, and we've just replaced a bad bill with another bad bill. And so now this all falls on the U.S. Secretary of Education. Right. He's got unprecedented power. How does that return control to states and local authorities?
Right. And it's interesting, back when the Federal Department of Education started, in 78, 79, New Hampshire, The United States was probably the top country in education. And since the federal government has taken over the last so many years, we have gone down, down, down. Now what are we? Not even in the top 50 probably anymore, top 25.
Yeah.
And I remember I was on the New England Board of Higher Education a couple of years ago. And a few years ago, they did a test. Let's see what happens if we take all 50 states as individual countries and compare them with the rest of the world. And Massachusetts came out number 1 in the world, and New Hampshire was, I believe, was number 6. And now, where are we?
Yeah.
Thank you, federal government, for destroying our education system, which is what happened.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I'm hearing, you know, that it used to be the kind of a conservative call to abolish the Department of Education. And what's interesting is, you know, because teachers are faced with what is going on with all of this federal intrusion in their classrooms, I'm now starting to hear teachers with this rallying cry to abolish the Department of Education. What they need to do at that level can be done with another bureaucracy. They don't need to have this kind of oversight. They don't need to have money going. Charlie Arlinghouse recently wrote an article in the Union Leader about why are we sending all of our money to Washington, D.C. so they can kind of coerce us and bribe us and threaten us to get it back.
Right.
And that's basically what they're doing in this piece of legislation. You know, you will have to do A, B, C, and D to get your federal funding. And so if parents have a problem with the curriculum or anything that's in their school, they're not going to be listened to by the administration or the school board. So now you've just created a division amongst your school board administrators and the parents, because the parents are saying, well, wait a second, I don't like this test. I don't like, you know, now we have to teach to the test because that's the reality of it.
Right.
It's a bad test. It's bad curriculum. And so, you know, parents come up and they say, you know, I don't like this math. They're asking my 7-year-old to explain why 2 + 2 = 4, and you know he knows it's 4, but he can't explain why. And so they go to the school board, and the school board says, well, yeah, we don't like that either, but you know what? We have to give this test. We have no choice. And we have to use the curriculum because this is what's on the test.
Right.
And if we don't do this, you know, we have the Secretary of Education who's not going to give us federal funding, so parent, we're going to ignore you. I mean, that's what we've created with this federal intrusion into our schools. We've silenced parents from helping their school districts to say, you know what? Let's find good quality textbooks. Let's find good quality curriculum. Let's let the teachers teach. Let's have them be part of curriculum selection. That just doesn't happen anymore.
And like I said, I mean, I know there was a whole school system in Washington State that refused the testing. They didn't lose any money. Mm-hmm. Nobody has lost any money. It's an empty threat. But I think some of the problem with our state DOE, 75% of their funding to pay for their employees comes from the federal government. So they're afraid they might lose their job because they won't have people paying for it.
Yeah.
But I think that's the real thing. It's not losing. The school district's not going to lose their money. It's the money for the poor school district, the poor people, kids in the state that get Title I money, and that's not a reality.
No, I mean, and then I think what that would prove, you know, I've talked to people who used to work in the U.S. Department of Education, and they've even said, look, you know, schools and states need to stand up. Where's the leadership? I mean, where's the leadership with our governor? Our governor just, you know, does everything the federal government wants them to do. Governor Hassan and the Department of Education at the state level, run by a commissioner appointed by the governor who facilitates everything the federal government wants. And so, you know, and this is true amongst most, if not all, governors in the United States. So I'm not just saying it's just her, but we have a serious lack of leadership amongst our governors, the commissioners who run the departments of education, and even a lot of school boards and administrators who just cave. You know, because in my opinion, I don't think any school should be administering the Smarter Balance in New Hampshire, even though it's required by law, because the law states that it has to be objectively scored and it has to be validated. This is not a validated assessment. It is violating state law. If I were an administrator, I would say, bring me a valid assessment to give to these kids.
The Iowa formative testing.
Yes, something that's been validated, and then that, you know, because I want to follow the law. But where any superintendents in this state saying, we have a problem here, you're bringing me an assessment that is not validated, and by law we have to have a validated assessment.
Okay, I think we've
Covered that one?
covered that one.
Yeah, I think so too.
Let's move on to another topic that you and I like, the New Hampshire School Board Association. One of the problems we have is in state law, the state prohibits the use of its funds from being directly or indirectly used to hire lobbyists under RSA 15. But schools pay dues to these organizations who then hire the lobbyists. Are they ignoring state law? Here's the law. It's simple. Except as provided in paragraph 1, no recipient of a grant or appropriation of state funds may use the state funds to lobby or attempt to influence legislation, participate in political activity, or contribute funds to any entity engaged in these activities. Any recipient of a grant or appropriation of state funds that wishes to engage in any of the activities prohibited in paragraph 1 or contribute funds to any entity engaged in these activities shall segregate the state funds in such a manner that such funds are physically and financially separate from any non-state funds. So, for example, there should be an accounting system in your school district that says none of the money that you're paying, that you taxpayers are paying, or that the state pays to the school district, only the local money is going to the school board association.
Which
But they don't
should
have-
probably stop, because
Right. But
why
they
are
don't-
you paying for this?
But they don't have that accounting system.
Mm-hmm.
So I think really what we need, a law saying that maybe it should be a warrant article on
Yeah,
the school board
yeah, that's a
association.
good idea, yeah,
Also, and basically, and here's the wording to use and specifically state that.
yeah.
Because one of the problems we have with the school board association and their lobbyists, also with the school administrators association, which also take your money and lobby
Against parental rights also.
against both
Yep.
of them, yeah. There are about 200 school districts in the state. The New Hampshire School Board Association has an annual meeting, and member school districts attend. I believe the quorum is about 50. Probably 160 school boards are members. So that's less than 1/3 of the members vote on their resolutions, which are for, should we do this, should we pass a law for this, should we stop this, and whatnot. But then they only need a majority, so maybe 26 members can agree on the resolution. That is then lobbied by the lobbyist. So then how can they say they represent all the school boards? They could fix this by having all the members vote online after the annual
Yeah.
meeting. But,
Oh, that's a good
but
point. yeah.
that's one of the problems, and you've
Yeah,
seen this
yeah.
with the school board lobbyist.
Right. Well, what happens, I think what parents should know is that you pay taxes, your taxes go to the budget, and then out of that budget, they pay dues. And so this is a lobbying organization for your school boards. However, your school boards are there to represent you. So now they're paying monies to this lobbying organization, and what they do is they develop model policies based on legislation that's passed, and they also lobby. And oftentimes they're lobbying against what you would want as a parent. So you're essentially paying somebody's salary to go against what you would want as far as legislation. And that's crazy.
Yeah, a good example of that was Common Core. It was clearly unfunded, mandated against 28A, yet I don't remember, I was on the school board when that happened, I don't remember any resolution saying that the school boards are for Common Core.
Yeah.
But yet, we know the School Board Association said, no, it's okay, we're for Common Core. The School Board Association, I'm going, why? It's an unfunded mandate.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's okay. No, it's not. It's got to buy the textbooks anyway. I'm going,
Yeah.
come on. I mean, here they should have taken the stand, and they
Yeah.
didn't. The worst example also is the School Administrators Association. They're lobbyists for your superintendents, which are more removed from
Right.
the vote, and yet you, the taxpayer,
Have to
are
pay 'em.
paying for them.
And, think about it. Teachers pay for their own lobbyists.
Right.
If the administrators want to pay for a lobbyist, let it come out of their salary. Oftentimes, it's part of their contract.
Contract,
So take it out. If you're a parent, if you're a school board member, stop paying dues to this organization. If your policies should come from your school board members. That's who should be drafting your policies. There are some schools that actually don't pay dues. So
Right,
Nashua just
Nashua
pulled
just
out.
pulled out.
Manchester hasn't been paying them. This is money that could be used in your classrooms. This is money that could be returned to you as taxpayers. Why fund these organizations to do what they should already be doing? Your school board should be doing, your administrators should be doing.
I actually was for the school board association when I was on. I thought, hey, you guys doing a good job, you're teaching and whatnot. And then I got up to, and after a few years, saw saying, wait a minute, they're not
Yeah.
doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
They're not representing your schools.
Yeah.
They're representing their own. They have a board of directors which they handpick. You know, and I remember one time when they had an opening, and I was on the school board, and I said, "Hey, I want to fill that opening."
Yeah.
But they wouldn't appoint me because
Oh.
they knew me. But as soon as I was off the school board, they appointed somebody else
Wow.
to be on the
Right.
southeast.
Right.
But no way.
So
they
it's
wanted me on it.
cronyism.
Oh, cronyism,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
they know me. That
Yep.
I didn't want, yeah.
Yep.
But
We wouldn't want to voice a dissent on there now, would we?
right. I mean, so their board of there's everything is fine. No Child Left Behind was a great bill. It was a
Yeah.
great law. Yeah.
Well, and recently they were in the news for putting up model legislation on transgender bathrooms.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And so they didn't even offer school boards quality information on another imposition by the federal government. The federal government is pushing schools to adopt policies to allow biological children, who one sex or the other, to share the bathroom of the opposite sex
And
if
I
they're
don't remember any
transgender.
resolution that they asked somebody. They just came up with this on their own.
Yeah, so they put out a model policy, and in Candia, for instance, they were recently in the news, and the problem was the school board administration did not give all of the information. It was like, here's what you need to do, this is what we suggest, and there was no selection, like you can use this policy or you can use this policy or you can use this policy. It's this policy, this is what the federal government wants. They want to push this bathroom policy, and you
And
better
locker
accept it.
rooms and
You
so
know,
it's okay
yeah.
for a 16-year-old boy to shower with
Yes.
13, 14-year-old girls.
Right, exactly. And that's what it says in the policy, that locker rooms, restrooms, anything. So, these are the things that you should be concerned about as a taxpayer and parent.
Okay. Also, since we're nearly running out of time, a little side note. Last show, we brought up the fact that schools must notify parents for any surveys, and that was the bill I pushed through last year. And school must publish the surveys for the parent to see at least 10 days before. And yesterday, while I was sitting there up in the legislature listening to hours and hours of bills, found out about a survey that was given to students in Manchester School to monitor their home activities, such as what food they were eating, television, et cetera, and parents were supposed to sign every day on what their kids did. Some parents refused, as they figured, hey, this is none of your business. Yeah, but then they found out that the kids that turned in these surveys, sound by the front, got rewarded in school. They got free pizza, and the kids that didn't, because the parents said it's none of your business, were punished for not being
Participating.
included.
A form of bullying, let's be honest.
Right. And that survey is against the law. I mean, even the federal law saying you can't ask those kind of questions. But I also understand today the vice principal of that school was given a copy of the law by, last time, I guess, Victoria Sullivan, Representative Victoria Sullivan, about what that law is. So
Yeah.
they're looking into it. Also, I understand the school committee was very concerned, and they're also looking into it.
They should be concerned. That's a way of kind of intimidating and bullying. If your kid's going to be singled out, they don't get to be in the party. I mean, do we need legislation that says anti-bullying from administrators? I mean, come on, where is the common sense? You don't treat children like that.
Right.
That's sad.
So it looked like the big clock on the wall says we're pretty much done. So thank you, Anne Marie. We had a
Sure, by quick.
good discussion. I know it always does. I go to the other shows. We're done. We're
Yeah.
ready. So thank you, and hopefully we can get this on YouTube soon, and I'll put it online. But
Great.
people in Litchfield will be seeing it 10 times in the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
So
Thanks.
thank you.